I've had a Tesla Model 3 for over 5 years now, and I absolutely love this car. And obviously, one of the best things about the car is the fact that it's powered by electricity, which is obviously much cheaper and also better for the environment than things like petrol and diesel. However, recently, things have gotten even better because this car is now not only powered by electricity, it's powered directly by the sun, and that is thanks to this big white box behind me. That's right, I have added solar panels and a Tesla Powerwall 3 to my property, and I am very excited about it. And to make things even more exciting, this has been officially done in collaboration with Tesla. So in this video, I'm going to go through the entire setup and installation process, as well as show you what it looks like in the app, because it is very, very interesting if you like data. So let's start at the beginning. Once it was decided that I was going to get the Powerwall, the first thing that happened was an installer came to my home. Now, Tesla don't install the Powerwalls themselves, they work with official third-party companies. So I worked with a company called Carbon Legacy, who were really, really good. Now, they came to the property to work out exactly where the Powerwall would go, along with how many solar panels we'd be able to fit on the roof. They also looked at my existing energy bills so that they could estimate how much money I'm going to start saving on electricity. From there, once confirming that I was happy, it was then time to actually get the installation booked in. So the installation took place over 5 days. Day 1 was simply getting scaffolding up around the property, because easy access to the roof is obviously required in order to safely install the panels. This probably only took about 3 or 4 hours, and then on day 2, the actual installers from Carbon Legacy came around so that they could start setting up the Powerwall and the Tesla gateway in the garage. Now, obviously, I know nothing about this, but it looked like a very intense and technical job. The 2 engineers spent a full 8-hour workday just constantly setting things up, and it looked like a really big project, but they were not done, because then on day 3, they came back to have another 8-hour workday in the garage, but this time they were joined by the team that would install the panels on the roof. Once again, this was a very technical process. It was weird having people on our roof. It was also very noisy. But by the end of the day, the solar panels were up, and oh, did they look absolutely glorious. I have wanted solar panels for so many years, so this was such an exciting moment for me. But the work in the garage was still not done, so on day 4, the 2 original engineers came back just to finish things off. It took them a further 3 hours before they were ready for me to come in and link the Powerwall to my Tesla app, which was a very easy process. You can see a kind of time lapse here. It took about 8 minutes in total, but that was largely because the engineers were making sure to explain everything to me so that I understood. And then lastly, another day was required just to take the scaffolding back down. But I wasn't even at home for that. I was actually walking 100,000 steps at the time. But now everything is installed, and I must say Carbon Legacy did a fantastic job of making everything look so very neat. There's so much wiring involved to connect the Powerwall to the Tesla gateway and the gateway to the solar panels on the roof, but everything has been left really tidy. And this was all done about 5 weeks ago now, so I can show you the last month worth of data, and I can talk you through the app because it is delightful. So here I am on the Tesla app. Now, firstly, what a delightful looking operating system. This is just visually very pleasing. And you can see that right now I'm generating 0.2 kilowatts of solar, which is not very much. That is because it randomly started hailstoning and it's full cloud sky. But 1 hour ago, the weather looked like this. It was absolutely beautiful. And when there was that lovely weather, I took a screen recording, which I'll show off now. You can see that 4.4 kilowatts of solar were being generated, which was enough to not only power the home, which was requiring 1.2 kilowatts, but also putting 3 kilowatts of power into the car. And I love the fact that the car shows up in the correct color in the garage as a lovely little visual. That is delightful. So the grid was not being used at all. But anyway, this is the live footage currently. So you can see that we are actually requiring 2 kilowatts from the grid. But honestly, that is quite rare these days, which is quite impressive given that it is still technically winter and it's only just started getting properly sunny within the last week or 2. So there's so much that I can go through here. So we can see if we go into the energy tab, this breaks down how much energy is actually being generated from different places. So you can see quite a lot of solar has come through today. And in fact, it's 3 p.m. right now, but 53% of the power that we have used has come directly from the sun, which is amazing because obviously that is completely free and it is completely clean energy as well. Now, if I was to go from day, let's actually go to month and we can see how much in March so far has come from the sun. And it is about a third, 33%, which is a big chunk for March, which is not a particularly sunny month. Like I said, it's still winter getting into spring. And I'm in the UK, which is not famous for sun. You can also see 21% of power has come from the grid and 46% has come from the Powerwall. You might be wondering, where has that power from the Powerwall come from, which I will explain in a moment. Because for now, I'm going to go back and I want to click on Go Off Grid. Anytime I please, I can click this Go Off Grid button. This would basically simulate what would happen if there was a power cut that was completely out of our control. Now, the installers demonstrated this for me before they left. Basically, if my street was to ever have a power cut, our power would go off for about 4 seconds and then just come back on like nothing ever happened, which is really, really useful to know. You know, Becky's got a fish tank. If a power cut happens, her filter stops working and her heater stops working, and then her fish are in danger. So it is amazing that we now have this backup in place. And if I go into settings and I go up to the Powerwall, you can see I can decide exactly how much power I always want to make sure is remaining in the Powerwall. So it's set to 20%, which is the recommended amount. So that means the Powerwall will never have less than 20% energy in it, meaning that if there is ever a power cut, we'll always have at least 20% power to rely on until the power in the street comes back on. Now let me go back off that, and I am instead going to go over to Impact. So this once again shows how much power today we have received from the sun, and it is also estimating the costs as well. But if I want to really go into the cost savings, I'll just specifically look at my energy provider's app, and this is where we really start to see the financial benefits of solar power, because as you can see, Thursday was a very sunny day. I used 11 pence worth of electricity from the grid. That is basically nothing. And then even on these other days, we've got about £1. And then on this big day, £4.95, I was charging the car there for a long trip. So I did require energy from the grid, but £4.95 is still so much lower than it would normally be. So once we get further into spring and summer, I think we're going to barely use the grid for electricity at all. Now, what I will say is you have to make sure that everything is set up correctly with your utility plan. So if I go back into settings and I go onto my utility plan rate, I have manually input all of this data myself just from information sent to me by my utility provider, which is Octopus. So the Powerwall just works off the numbers that you type in. So if you get those wrong and you haven't put them in correctly, your Powerwall's just going to be working off incorrect calculations. But you'll see when I go to the schedule, I am on a utility rate plan that is specific to people that have solar panels. So our electricity from the grid is at its cheapest between 2 AM and 5 AM, and is at its most expensive between 4 PM and 7 PM. So what does the Powerwall do with this information? Well, it's very clever actually. The Powerwall takes in power from the grid when rates are at its cheapest, and then it disperses it from the Powerwall into my home when energy is at its most expensive. So that means that even on days where there is absolutely no sun, which let's be honest, in the UK, that is quite common, the Powerwall is still doing everything in its power to get me the cheapest energy bill it can. And I'm told that it doesn't just end there. The Powerwall even looks at weather predictions based on its location, so it can estimate exactly how much power it needs to drain from the grid on days when there isn't going to be much sun. Oh, I just love this app. I am honestly looking at this all the time. Anytime it's sunny, I'm not like, oh, I need to go sit in the sun. I'm like, oh, I need to go see how many kilowatts I'm generating. So if I go back into Impact and we change to lifetime, let's just see. Oh, estimated energy value, £127. That is fantastic. Solar offset, 38%. And then the backup history, that's when the Carbon Legacy engineers simulated a power cut. So the whole system was installed specifically on the 31st of January. And you can see they turned the power off for 2 minutes just so they could show what happens if there is actually a power cut. Oh, look, it's actually getting quite sunny again. 2.2 kilowatts of solar currently being generated. So you can see that that is going into the Powerwall. And then the Powerwall is dispersing that into my home to power things like that light, the light above me, the TV, our computers, etc, etc. Now you might be wondering, Jack, what happens when the Powerwall is 100% full and it's still very sunny? Well, in events like that, this happens. The excess power that is being generated goes back to the grid, and in theory, I should be getting paid by our energy provider for that excess power. However, due to a backlog at the national grid, that is not yet set up, which means the grid is getting my beautiful, clean solar electricity for free and then charging other customers for it, which makes me so mad, but I cannot do anything about it. I just have to wait for the national grid to sort out their backlog so that I can get put on an export tariff and start earning money back. But that is still very exciting. Not only do we have a cheaper energy bill each month, we also can start getting paid for all of the green energy that we are creating, which is just fantastic. I am very excited for that to be set up. But in the meantime, I'm very disgruntled, and you should see me frantically running around turning on all of our appliances like the washing machine to stop giving power to the grid for free. But that is not the Tesla Powerwall's fault, that is the national grid's fault. Now, I haven't actually really shown you what happens with the car yet, so if I go to home, I can actually switch back to the Turd Boy Mobile, which is this beautiful car. So this is an interface you'll have probably seen before, but it does now look a little bit different. You can see this tab is my charge, which is pretty standard, but I now have this second little ball because the charging process now works slightly differently. So if I take this ball, wiggle it about, and I hold it down here, that means that the car will charge to 60% no matter what. But this second ball is specifically for charging on solar. So if I was to leave it here, that means that the car will still charge to 60% guaranteed no matter what solar power is available. But if it gets sunny enough, the car will start charging until it reaches the 85% mark. So everything between the two balls will come purely from solar power. And this is what that looks like when it is happening. It is very visually satisfying, and it's really nice to see exactly how much power has come specifically from the solar power. And the whole thing's just done automatically. You can see right now it is on pause because if we go back to the home tab, there isn't quite enough solar being generated, only 1.1 kilowatts. So it's prioritizing making sure that the home stays powered and the Powerwall fills up for when our electricity tariff gets more expensive. So basically it's a case of you making sure you've set all of the info up correctly, and then once that's done, the rest of the process is just handled for you. The Powerwall works everything out and makes sure that everything's done in the most efficient manner. If I was to slightly criticize things, I'll go back into the car section. What irritates me is that if I am going on a long journey and I need to just make sure that I have basically 100% charge, that's a little bit fiddly now, because if I drag this over to 100%, you'll see that I actually can't drag this also to 100%. It just stops there at like 90%. And what I actually have to do is go into here, click on charge on solar, and then turn that off so that I can go back on, and then that should get rid of this eventually. There you go, it's happened now, and now I can make sure that I charge to 100%, and you can see that it's starting to charge. So that's just a little bit fiddly. I'm going to turn that back on and put everything back to how it was. There we go, perfect. But that doesn't happen very often because I'm not having to charge to 100% that frequently. But that is pretty much my experience 5 weeks into having a Tesla Powerwall 3. At the moment, I'm very, very happy. I will be doing another video possibly in 12 months time so that I can work out exactly how much money it has saved on my energy bill, and also document, am I still happy, are there any issues that have arisen, so make sure you check that out. Now, Tesla are also currently doing a Live on Sunshine competition where you can win solar, a Powerwall, and a wall connector system, and a 10-day Tesla test drive. So if you want to enter that, there is a link in the description, as well as a link to just more about the Powerwalls in general. Thank you very much for watching. I am very excited about my new solar system. It is beautiful. I'll keep you updated with more videos, and I will see you later.